Aloha! Welcome everybody to another episode of A Dose of Positivity. And today's special guest is Dr. Hana Roberts. And we are so excited to have you here, Dr. Hana. And if you could just wave to everybody and you can see her ukulele in the back. And if she's feeling it, maybe she'll play a song or two for us at the end. That would be really great. But we have a really great interview this week. And also next week we have Sally Fallon, author of Nourishing Traditions, coming on, which I'm super excited. We have so many amazing speakers, and Dr. Hana is one of them. And she's been sick, and bless her heart, she is feeling better today. And we are so happy that you're here. Like each time, every week, this week is a little bit different because of this storm. We lost power once already today. So if we blank out, it might only be for a minute. You can try popping back in, but Mother Nature is doing her thing and we are so grateful for her. So whatever she decides to do, we will honor. And while we're waiting for people to come in too, or like each week, I invite you all just to get into a really comfortable place, grab your beverage of choice, and something probably where you are most likely warm and nourishing, and where I am is something, my cherry juice with lemon water, which I drink every single day. And if you're not drinking 2 quarts of water, really pretty much pure water a day, we'll get into this later in our talk with Dr. Roberts, it's a good time. Today is the first day of the rest of your life drinking 2 quarts of water, because it is really important for every single system in our bodies. But I'd like to invite you all just to take a couple of shallow breaths through your through your nose and out through your nose. Some really gentle, calm breaths. And I'm going to be reading a very short section from my book, Living Like the Future Matters, because this section is very appropriate to what we're talking about today and about the health crisis that's happening globally. And also at this time, I would just like to think about all the people who are struggling around the world and what's happening in this World War III, really, that's the crimes against humanity that's happening, and remind us how blessed we are to be here. So this is about recovery, really, like from war or virus or whatever it is. It's called restoration, planting seeds for the future. Restoration is the act of returning something to its former and often better condition. Nature teaches us about restoration and recovery. A clear-cut forest will eventually recover, as can a polluted river. A broken bone will mend in time. Take care of a wound, and it will heal if you do not pick at the scab. If we are compromised, we can rehabilitate. In nature, a diversified ecosystem has no addictions. It is healthy and balanced when it is respected. When a natural environment is disturbed, drilled, mined, fracked, or dumped on, it deteriorates under the pressure of overproduction. To some people, this might look like progress. Like the spirit of the trampled earth, our fragile internal landscape can get stripped when our good intentions are dumped on and shunned. When our productivity is devalued, it disturbs our souls. Desperate and drained, we fill ourselves with something, anything. A restorative mindset allows no room for such nonsense. When the soil gets nourished like our souls, there is no need for artificial stimulants or drugs. It takes attention, not toxins, to heal depleted and distressed souls. Temporary relief from these toxins only makes the problem larger. Eventually, the substances wear off and are ineffective. It then takes stronger substances to perform, stronger antibiotics. These substances interfere with life and can even interfere with our ability to produce healthy offsprings. Addiction takes over like an invasive species. Balance and nourishment are the key to success in every sense of the word. We can learn so much from Mother Nature. You're sideways beautiful, Hana. Thank you so much for listening to that. What's going on like in what we're seeing in Ukraine and what we've seen in many wars and viruses and pandemics throughout time and history. Humanity somehow always goes through a recovery time and a restoration time and then a regeneration time. It doesn't just happen. It happens because of people like Dr. Roberts and people like you on the call who really care, something has to help build the soil back, build the soul. The souls need us all to uplift and help us get through these times. And that's why I always say it takes from the soil to the soul for us to really find all the components necessary to bridge these gaps of inhumanity, deception, and everything that everybody's feeling different things right now. It doesn't come from a pill. That only makes you ill. It comes from getting information from many different directions, taking it all in, educating ourselves, showing up to conversations like this. We need each other. And I don't say the word need very often. I choose. If we are able to energetically resonate this healing energy, like people on the call today, I know are experiencing everything from migraines to COVID. Sometimes when we're in that migraine or we're in that toilet bowl with our heads hanging over, we feel so alone. And it's times like this more than ever for us to remind ourselves the next time when the head's in the toilet bowl or we're in the darkness, that there is light and that there are people like all of us here to help each other regenerate, to get through these challenging times. So when I was going through my really dark time, I was here in Alaska, I gained 60 pounds, and there's this other section of my book I was going to read, but I don't need to read it because I kind of memorized it. But what I did, and this is why I have Dr. Hana Roberts on the line, is, I didn't just go to my MD because I was feeling depressed and anxious. I didn't just go to a therapist. I went to an acupuncturist too. I got massages and I talked to a naturopath. Hana wasn't even a naturopath yet, but as soon as she became one, I started going to Hana because I know what it feels like to really be down in the dumps. And I knew that there's just not like one food, or there's just not like one supplement, or there's just not like one person that's going to make it all go away. Because nature teaches us about diversity and coming all together with all of these things and looking at what is truly going to benefit you and me and all of us and everybody who's spreading our energy as far as we can to Ukraine and other places in the world that are challenged right now. It takes all of us to focus on that positivity. Don't ever estimate your loving intentions right now. Don't ever underestimate that your thoughts and who you are and what you bring to the world can contribute to easing anything that's happening right now. Otherwise, we can get really depressed and we get really sick and we end up with our heads in the toilet bowl or whatever it is. When we're activated and we're helping each other, bam! That's when the magic begins. And I am so glad that, I don't know, like if all of you, and you can put your questions and put anything you want in the chat, because I'm going to give Dr. Roberts a proper introduction. And then, she's just one of many people that are here to support you and me. And I'm another one. And you guys are supporting me by showing up. And I'm so grateful for that. So without further ado, Dr. Hana Roberts is not only a dear friend and an incredible human, she is a licensed naturopath physician who strives to address the underlying causes of disease and achieves this through individualized integrative therapies that really work. Hana specializes in chronic conditions, allergies, autism, autoimmune disorders, naturopathic adjunctive, oncology, GI disorders. I know there's somebody on here with that, and mental health conditions. She holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of California, Berkeley in Neurobiology and a Doctorate of Naturopathic Medicine from the nation's Univ of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon. Hana also is a community educator and regularly conducts lectures and workshops on natural medicine. Hana was born and raised on the Big Island right down the road from me. Yay! Hana enjoys growing local food, singing and playing her ukulele, and spending time with her beautiful family and friends on her homestead in North Kohala. Hana is a soil-to-soul entrepreneur, businesswoman, incredible contribution to our community. And I am so grateful that you are here, Ms. Hana and Dr. Roberts. And I would like to, already people are welcoming you to the call. You guys, if you have any of those problems, please put your questions in the chat. And I would love to open up this discussion about regeneration and alternative health, and with giving you the opportunity right now to share a little bit more about yourself and how you got into being a naturopath.
Thanks everyone for letting me share and come on and take the time. So I think, like a lot of us, I'm a wounded warrior, right? So I had real struggle with compulsive overeating as a kid, depression. These are the main ones, and I knew that the answer wasn't just therapy or this. I knew there was something more, and the more I got into it, I realized, food is an addiction. Food is made to be a drug these days. And so in college, it got really bad. But in terms of that dark night of the soul really helped me. I was studying pre-med at Berkeley, and the more I studied medicine, I was confused of why I would want to continue. There's a part of me that really liked the status and the cool classes and the neurobiology. And then the more I got into it, the more I realized they're not studying like the neurobiology of the mycelium and the the quantum, what is consciousness, and these kind of questions that I really had. It was just like a squid axon in a lab, and very didactic, and just kind of basically soulless, really. And so at that point, I had known about naturopathic medicine, but kind of swept me in, because I was like, wow, you learn medicine, but you also learn all these other herbal medicine, homeopathy, and you really are getting to the root cause. And so, but before that, in undergrad, I definitely healed myself of compulsive overeating with just not eating sugar, not eating processed food, working on it. And it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back for sure. But now I can say I'm pretty much, I got to watch the sugar, and sometimes even just the kombucha and the fruit will get me. But I would say, and then as an addict, you know, you sort of, I nailed that addiction, and then some other one will like pop out at you, and you'll be like, oh, this and that. So no, I have a real compassion for addiction, and that low dopamine, always wanting more stimulation, and that and learning how to self-soothe and to build more balance in my brain, and exercise. And also to know, if you're an addict, it's, well, okay, you're always going to have a little bit of that drive. So trying to do exercise, music, and information. I'm kind of an information addict. So that it's just kind of how you are. So getting healthy things in front of it, I think, is important. And I have a real passion for helping people, and for helping them figure out stuff, and also empowering people. That's one sad thing I find about medicine in general, is that there's almost like a witch aspect to it. Like, as we label things, even in natural medicine, we sort of crystallize the problem and the identity for a person. And so trying to figure out how to play the game, but also get people to almost enchant themselves out of the stories too, and find solutions. And sometimes you can't, and sometimes it's just empathy and presence for people as they suffer and go through hard passages. So it's a little bit about.
I love that you're so vulnerable, and I don't know about anybody else on the call, but what you really spoke. I mean, that's kind of why, you know, I wrote this book, you know, about, it's all pretty much comes down to, you know, my addictions when I crashed and burned when I was about your age, actually. And I think there's, you know, we know, wow, you can hear the wind here. Wow. Is it windy where you are? It's so windy here. I had a real food addiction. I still do, you know, but it's more under control because of people like you know, who've helped me get through it, and Dr. Alvita and so many others. But I attribute it to, you know, everybody on this call, and probably everybody who's listening to the replay, has some form of addiction, whether it's drugs, porn, alcohol, food, information, or gambling. Because, you know, we've been born into this addiction to the American dream, trying to get to that American dream, which is very unsustainable, unhealthy to try and achieve. And it turned me into a workaholic and a foodaholic. And so when I see what's happening now, and this is a question I have for you, like with your practice too, is since COVID, I mean, we have seen like prescription drugs go up like 50-60%. And we have seen more depression and anxiety in the history of that we know of since modern big pharma. The pharmaceuticals are raking it in, especially. So how did COVID affect your practice? Do you feel more people were starting to come to you because they were looking for alternative ways? And also with the vaccine, how people were responding to that as well. Can you speak to that a little?
Mm-hmm. There is a power of polarity right now, I would say. And so within that, more people were attracted to me and some were not as attracted in terms of what was resonating. But there's people were sicker in some ways and definitely going through it, and a lot of, especially the kids, a lot of anxiety and just suffering and home alone a lot and that. And also in just like I was saying, like the power of giving something a name. In some ways I like the line, someone had said this, COVID was a flu with a really good PR campaign. And yeah, I don't mean to trivialize it in any way. And there's a lot, it took down a lot of people. And, but in terms of like our response to it was pretty draconian and intense. And there was a lot of mental health challenges, as you spoke to, because of that. There's, but it also, I see it building the strength of people. One thing I see on the larger collective is people being very weak, and myself included, and used to comfort, used to just get things quick, things being how they want them to be. And then when we're met struggles, I think we strengthen up. And I think that's what this time is doing. It's building resilience because we have to. And there's something to that. I think as modern humans, we're sort of killed with comfort. At least I feel that way. Like it's, we just all become kind of low dopamine, like scrolling and easy food, easy everything. And so that's, my positivity in this time is actually that it's going to get so bad that we're going to get so much stronger and like actually be forced into rebuild. Because even me, I have all this food out there. Sometimes I don't go pick the ulu and go kill my cow. And I do butcher cows sometimes, but it's easier for me to go to Costco. It's easier for me to buy my little paleo snack at Costco and my organic meat there already perfectly packaged than it is to like literally walk outside and pick an herbal tea. And so there's a level of sort of happiness I have that, okay, now we're going to be real humans. We're going to really, so
get our hands in the soil and get our dopamine and serotonin from the right sources, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there's a scare. I mean, I'm scared as well. And I would hope that we could learn a little bit more delicately and sort of learn from our past and foresee. But it seems like we're a little dense collectively and being steered in disturbing directions too. So. Yeah.
So and that mental health piece is so important, and this convenience life out of convenience has created so much complacency, which we're not using our bodies as much, and it atrophies our minds is what I notice. And when everybody was in lockdown, and that was exactly what we were seeing. Not exactly, I mean, I'm not saying I know all, but I mean, that was the worst part of it. And you'd go, if you did go on the internet, you'd see people like boxing and hitting the walls and just doing anything to move their bodies around to get moving. But there's something that just doesn't do it. And I'd love you to talk, I mean, naturopath, nature. Well, there's a couple things coming in the feed. You can look in the feed. We'll get to that in just a minute. But how naturopath relates to nature, nature's medicine. Can you just speak about, like Richard Louv says, the further we get from nature, the less inclined we are to save it, right? And the more, in actuality, the more we need it. With the electronics that are happening and all bombarded with commercials. But just talk about mental health and our physical health in relation to nature, and how you see and why you chose the lifestyle you have. Maybe you can tell people about how you live too, at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it's gorgeous. Me and Donna are pretty blessed up here in the northern tip of Hawaii. I was born here, but it took me going to Portland and Berkeley, which are great places, but it took me on the mainland to realize how blessed we are here. I'm forgetting the rest of the question. It was just about natural medicine and mental health and
nature. And I mean, you live on a homestead, you live off grid, you do grow a lot of food, and you have a freezer full of like bone broth and things like that. And so just, that's part of being healthy, right? And part of something that I feel like when I come in, you kind of prescribe to your people, right? Like, and just being out in nature and how that affects mental health and your physical health.
Well, I mean, even just simple things, I guess the Japanese have studied it. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but even just being in nature, forest bathing for the mind, the sunlight, that is really something that I think we need to re-embrace, learning about the sun and how it literally charges up our mitochondria, and it's not just vitamin D, it affects our mood deeply, and we are more quantum light creatures than we are just chemical creatures. And even in natural medicine, we're pretty stuck on this herb and this food and this chemical reaction when really we're ignoring the light and how sensitive we are to light. So getting out and touching the earth, I really try to get all my patients to remember you get electrons from the earth. So getting out first thing, even if it's just a couple minutes, bare feet, greet the sun. Even if it's cloudy, you get about 30% of the sunlight. And that first hour or two, you don't get the UV light. So you don't have to worry as much about, oh, is this bad for my eyes? I think a lot of it is lies too about, I mean, you don't want to burn, obviously, but you don't want to shy away from the sun and sunset too. These are naturally very spiritual times too. They take your breath away, and there's a spiritual moment, and it's a natural meditative moment. So Donna, you got to all come to Donna's house for sunset. I've got the sunrise zone, and she's got the perfect sunset.
Oh, I hope you do. Well, I love it. This is so cool what you just said, because it ties into what Andres has said, is like with the sunscreen, a lot of these advertisements, these commercials and media, they get you, to they're you don't want to say lies, or maybe someone, my sunscreen is I wear a shirt, right? And I cover myself. I don't put anything on my body that I wouldn't put in my body. I'll put coconut oil on my body. But that, if you can all think of that as this one simple thing, why would you put something on the largest organ in your body that you wouldn't need? It's the largest organ in your body. But Andres was saying too here, like all these drug commercials that they diagnose you because a lot of it's kind of like the whole medical cartel, where the medical pharmaceutical companies are, the doctors make royalties or they get bonuses and trips to Hawaii the more drugs they prescribe, right? Isn't that true? I have heard that many times and read that, and even met drug reps who said, well, I'm here because I sold the most drugs. And sometimes the diagnosis might be misdiagnosed all for so many years. People just say, oh, just take this pill or just take that. And I'm not saying I don't love modern medicine. I mean, these antibiotics saved me from my oral infection, or going to the emergency room when you break your hip, or getting pneumonia. I mean, the medical system, there's so many beautiful things about it. But like anything, we're kind of like getting back to addiction. It seems like we're addicted to going to the doctor, or somebody else is going to take care of these problems for us, when it's important. And then that's part of what we really want to talk about with the remainder of our time here, if anybody has any questions about your health issues too, is how do we take our health into our own hands?
Mm-hmm. And that requires responsibility and requires work, diligence, education. So it's not easy. But I think we all, the rewards really pay off, and there's really nothing that some patients, it's interesting. They'll just be in for a little thing and I'll be like, hey, like just, you don't need to eat that and reduce your carbs and your processed food. And then he comes back like 6 months later, like totally shredded. And I was like, wow, you just took that one little thing and you went with it. And then some people
what do you mean what do you mean shredded?
I mean, as in like, so I had a patient where we were dealing with some other quick little thing. And then we were running his labs by, and I saw he was a little bit pre-diabetic. So I was like, oh, okay, let's lower your carbs here and let's start eating some real food. He was real local style, which I don't know if you guys know, but it's kind of like plate lunch and that style. And when I saw him 6 months later, I was floored by how much weight he lost and how healthy he was and how energetic and how great. And so that's what I mean by
shredded.
You don't know what seeds you plant and whether people are ready either. And it's not really my responsibility, but that seems to be the word for me is responsibility, and taking that responsibility is the basis of it.
Yeah. I know when I was going in, you guys, most because you get my newsletters, and if you don't, just put your email in there. I write an article every week. But on usually health and nature, like our Facebook page, Nature Therapy, Holistic Health, Live Like the Future Matters. It's like I really took my health into my own hands. I went to my acupuncturist. I talked to Hana. I went to the oral surgeon. I had a lymphatic massage the night before and shortly after. Not everybody maybe can afford to do all those things, but I swear I must have watched 50 different YouTube videos on sinus lifts and bone grafts and implants and extractions, and these are doctors for free that you can listen to. Anywhere from an Ayurvedic doctor to a naturopath, right there on YouTube for free. I got so much information. Not only that, they give you a phone number and a website. And I even called a couple of the offices of these dental clinics. And, that to me was proactive. That was to me taking charge of my health. And now I'm charged with the responsibility of, after 15 days today of antibiotics, of building up my microbiome, because we all know what antibiotics, they shred in the bad way. That's why I had Hana, you talk about shredding.
They're bad shredding.
My God, shredding cabbage. So I know you guys, one of these days I'm going to have Zach Bush on, but this is something he does. This is like this gut support I just got. It's just full of herbs and all this stuff, tower stuff, to reinforce my gut microbiome. I'm using cherry juice, which is really good for my overall body. Hana had recommended some other supplements, and I just want to show you this. And then Hana, I have a few more questions for you. And anybody, I know Michaela, anybody on here who has any kind of health questions, this woman, Dr. Roberts, is a genius. This is one of my favorite supplements right here. Vitamin C goes right here on my tree. But if where you live, it might be an apple a day. And if you guys didn't read my article 2 weeks ago, I wrote all about the medicinal properties of apples and how to use apples in different ways. But just eating fruits and vegetables. This is another thing I'm using a lot of, is this elderberry powder. And It's all organic. But I don't want you to all freak out when you see this, because it is a mother load. And if you guys are listening on a podcast, I'm sorry about it. You can go look at this on YouTube, because it's worth just seeing it just for that. But this, my husband and I are committed, like, taking it into our own hands. And so this is our supplement container, and you can see how big my head is. It's a big container, and it is really full, but we don't take them all at once, but I have them on hand. They're all natural, organic, all wholesome supplements. And when some my acupuncturist told me about, some Dr. Roberts told me about, some I read about on my own. So taking our health into our own hands is more important now than ever. I mean, we don't think about it from the comfort of our homes when that, like, Pearl Harbor happened, right? Or that it can happen on our own soil or whatever. But when the shit hits the fan, or if the shit hits the fan, excuse my French, whatever English, knowing this stuff is huge. And all of this stuff comes back to nature. All of this stuff comes back to the earth. So knowing how to live like a natural naturopath is so important. So Hana, I wanted to just have you talk a little bit about that, and why should people also get a second or a third opinion? Like when I came into you found out things about me that other practitioners didn't find. So just talk a little bit about the value of having like diversity in nature and having diversity in your health practitioners. That would be really helpful.
It's a team approach, and there can be, I don't really blame modern medicine, the practitioners. I mean, some of it at a certain level, I'm okay. COVID aside, the structure of modern medicine, the rapidity of the visits, I couldn't keep up the way I have a lot of admiration for what level of grinding they're put in between just the time, the HMO, what they can do, what they can't do. So I'm impressed they show up every day and do what they do and do so much. But in terms of getting to the root cause, having other options, thinking outside the box, I think that's, and you don't need a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor to do that necessarily, but usually we're trained up in that way to look that way. Also, and I have it too, like some of my patients where I've seen them for so long and I get used to them. Sometimes you sort of just, they stop being in the forefront of your mind, or you just kind of, you mentally get used to them. Oh, you're like this, right? But maybe something's changed, or I'm not putting the energy in a fresh perspective as someone else can have that perspective for you. I would caution though, not having too many cooks in the kitchen where you're like doctor hopping from one person to the next, and the next person's going to have that right answer and that magical supplement, because really, sticking to a path and kind of working with someone, as long as it's going well, it's probably better than trying to be scattered. But yeah, having some like a team where you have, and there's things I just can't access like, as you know this, Donna, like there's ways I can access parts of referrals and stuff, and there's ways I can't, and you're glad that you have your insurance and your other doc as well. And so, but like you said too, it's amazing right now, the power of the internet, because we all can access amazing amounts of information and amazing self-healing practices. And so now more than ever, we can take our health into our hands and lead the way. But it does help not to always have to like heal yourself and come up with stuff for yourself. I'm guilty of that, where I'll be like, oh, it's fine, I'll figure it out, and then I'm like, no, go see someone, go relax into that, relax into being cared for.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah, I agree with not having too many cooks in the kitchen, but man, I sure love having my prep cooks around to help make it easier. And I know, like, there's two sides to that. Getting not 100 opinions, maybe not even 10, but a few is really a good idea, especially when you have a major situation going on, and feeling really comfortable with your practitioner. I mean, I want to feel like I can go in and hug my doctor, because there's love there, there's trust there, and there's really caring, compassion there. And so many of these physicians, like you said, Hana, are so busy. There's a huge level of burnout, especially with COVID and everything. They're overworked, and, trying to give that's why it's even more important, I think, for all of us to really dot our own I's and cross our own T's, and not take, just like, don't take no for an answer, right?
Although this whole I was just gonna say, the second opinion thing is scary right now, how this is under attack, and that you can't have different opinions and there's one way. And it seems like there's a real trend where we're going into, this is the way to think, this is the medical answer. And that's scary. There's many ways to heal. There are many truths, many second opinions, and we need to hold on to that and value that, and not just sort of let this crumble beneath us, our ability to have a variety of viewpoints and stances.
Yeah, well, that's perfect way to sum up that question of getting more opinions, but mostly it's coming down to us and what feels really good to us. And there's a lot of people with some questions popping in. The second opinion are threatened when your opinion is a lie. That's very cute. Very good, Alan. And also about melanoma, one of the things that's one of our guests wrote in here is, about getting enough water, being hydrated enough, and getting enough sun. And that, and I never heard this before, but maybe you can confirm this. The sun helps us to detox your body, so it does not cause melanoma. It's trying to help your body detox. Is that true? And then they added, forget to add that you need enough hydration to thoroughly flush them, get the toxin stuff out, and that you should test a melanoma patient for dehydration. Does it, that's a really interesting, I never had heard that. So people with melanoma are always usually told, don't be in the sun, you don't want to get melanoma, right? So, like, what's your take on that, and around hydration and sun around melanoma? What's your take on that?
There are some interesting data and places people will get melanoma, like on the bottom of their feet, or places where the sun is actually not shining, or higher incidences in countries where there's less sunlight. So the direct one-to-one correlation is that the sun, more sun bad, more melanoma, is not necessarily a direct equation. With that said, early burns, like really bad sunburns as you're young, in your younger years, are going to damage your DNA and more likely to have skin cancers. But in terms of going back to the sun, this is part of the war, like the war on the sun is our, should be worshipped. Is born every day, dies. Like it gives us life, it gives us energy, it helps our vitamin D, which helps our immune system get at the surveillance and clean up all those little cells. And so it's silly. Although I wouldn't say, if you're a melanoma patient, okay, go lay out and just burn yourself. But again, that morning sunlight, afternoon sun, getting, like, worshiping those times, safe times, and covering up during the day with non chemical skin, maybe mineral protection, but In
Just
terms of what?
just little light clothing, just wear a
Yeah.
shirt in the sun or pants, put a big brim hat on. And
Here's one interesting thing that I've found. I did about 2 years ago, I went very heavy animal based and I cut out all the seed oils. And a lot of people say when they cut out seed oils, so, canola, these types of oils, that they don't burn as much in the sun. And I have pretty fair skin. Like I burn easily. And I would say it tends to be true. It's almost like you don't fry, your cells don't fry in the same way. There's more of that saturated fat that is just less reactive to the sun. So for whatever that's worth, I do think lessening vegetable oils is a strategy as well. And if someone's asking, less oxidation, and that too, like these oils, it's really hard to get them. Some cold pressed seed oils are fine, but they're so easy to oxidize. And so there's a relation to the sun aspect.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because next week's guest is Sally Fallon, who is the founder of the Winston Price.
Yeah, she's a legend. You have two legends coming, my heroes, my nutritional heroes.
I know, and they're going to be talking to,
wow.
And they're part of the reason I eat the way I eat, and you follow that diet pretty much too, which is really cool. That makes so much sense though about the animal fats, as long as it's good quality meat, your meat before you eat genuinely, humanely, lovingly raised animals. That, when you think about our primitive ancestry, and when we start getting into that conversation next week, they didn't put sunscreen on their bodies, and they weren't walking around with sunburns, right? But we don't have that much time left, and we have some really good questions I wanted to ask you about. Two things. What do you think about ozone therapy and IVC for treating cancer? Or really treating anything.
Right. So these are oxidative therapies. Ozone is 3 oxygens together, and it's something I use in my practice. It's major autohemotherapy. You take the blood out, ozonate it, and put it back through a UV light. And it's been around for a long time and used all over the world. It is there's a whole redox. We know a lot about antioxidants, but we kind of don't really give the oxidative burst of the whole equation maybe not as much of a fair time in the spotlight. So also high dose vitamin C, when you have a high dose of it, the body, especially cancer cells, they can't really process it. So it builds up hydrogen peroxide. And then it's an oxidative burst. It's almost like a chemotherapeutic. And these are helpful for cancer for sure, but I wouldn't say they're like a adjunctive oncology. I don't think you can say there's a cure for cancer. Usually the people I see that do the best, if they have a huge tumor, they take the best of Western medicine, maybe a surgery or see, it really depends on the cancer. And then maybe we do sets of IVs to really work on any remaining cells and work on the diet and the immune system. And it's a complex one, but it's helpful. And ozone's a little different than the C, and that ozone also upregulates the mitochondria, and then also mitochondria being the energy of the cells, and then cytokines. So if you have autoimmune disease, sometimes you get these, just the immune system, and you feel junk after you're sick. Those are the cytokines, like me right now in my brain, getting over an illness. I feel kind of like, ugh. So ozone actually balances and pulls down those cytokines. So I find it helpful in autoimmune disease. And it also gets at intracellular organisms like viruses. And so it's complex, but I just like it. The smell of it energizes me. I'm like, I have a attraction to it. Ozone.
Yeah, it makes me feel great getting the drips. I need one that has some gut health in it. But well, that's good to hear you say that. Like, I really appreciate your respect for Eastern and Western medicine, and like someone who is a cancer patient who doesn't want to have radiation or chemotherapy. How do you take care of a patient when they're dead set on not wanting to go natural all the way? What would you recommend?
Sorry, when they are dead set on only being natural, is that? Yeah. Well, I think the choice is up to them. Legally, we always have to have them have an oncologist to treat. And I always am I view myself as an adjunctive, like helping fill the pieces where regular oncology doesn't do it, because they're not really focusing on the immune system and keeping the immune system healthy to keep the cancer, either fight it down or keep it down. So treat what we find. I mean, there's quite a bit in terms of the metabolic approach to cancer. Really, we can starve it out with ketosis and different strategies that way. There's mistletoe, and there's quite a bit of supplements. But sometimes I try to talk people out of they might be throwing out the baby with the bathwater of like making sure you keep your oncologist and someone to run that imaging, and hopefully you can have a good relationship where you can say no of what you don't want and what you do. But sometimes people maybe are doing a disservice by rejecting all of that medicine. But especially like a big surgery that could take down a tumor load. Although there, like anything, there's lots of subtleties. I can't speak in total generalizations here.
Right, because there's risk in getting a biopsy that the cancer might spread. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it, really, right?
Well, no, I mean that right there is like maybe a bit of a myth that when you biopsy that you're seeding, that the tumor is always seeding, and so there's ways you can mop it up with modified citrus pectin and things. But are we probably doing needless biopsies for prostate cancer and breast cancer and over treating and over? Sure, we are. And there's all of medicine, I find it's a risk and benefit analysis in each thing. So sometimes that's what a lot of the time I'm trying to help people figure out for themselves, like what is the risk benefit analysis of to do a treatment, to not do a treatment? How do we make it more safe if we choose to do it? How?
Right.
So.
No, I like that, right? That's taking the best of both. Okay, we're going to do chemo or we're going to do the radiation, but we're going to prepare ourselves before we go in, so our immune system's strong and we're really doing good. And then afterwards, we have a whole protocol to make sure we're absorbing or whatever we're doing, and that's where getting those different opinions, or having, like you said earlier, Hana, having that team and like those doctors or those practitioners that you feel like you can hug and love and trust, because there is something very psychological and about that trust factor when you go in and you are working with a doctor. I know it is for me. When I feel someone cares about me, it's a whole different feeling than when you go in and you get like, man, you just all of a sudden, if I'm not feeling supported, I go downhill, just mentally, just like, what do I do now? Just having that support. And like you were just talking about, like giving people options, giving them the tools and the resources that they need to make their own healthy decisions. Someone says, physician says, heal thyself. But someone has a question, Joy, here. And here she goes, in terms of oxidation, ozone, chlorine dioxide, CO2, all that, making CDSs using it. Can you see that in the chat? She's curious. She says she's curious about the redox, or maybe she means detox. Please explain. Do you see that in there? I
see the chat in mine, but is the question on chlorine dioxide then in terms of as a treatment? Yeah. there's not much good studies on it, but there's a lot of people's talk, and with all this COVID, even just supply chain not being able to access all the normal things that we can. I've looked into it, and it's interesting. I think it's one of those where it's a little scary to even talk about, because when I look at it, I'm like, wow, when people start talking about this, bad things happen. And so it's one cool thing with COVID, though. There was this one Mexican physician. He was treating in the Mexico City hospital COVID-19, and he had like 1,500, something like that, patients, severe COVID hospitalized patients that he was doing chlorine dioxide with, and they really responded positively. I mean, it has a way of, the way I say it's actually pool flakes, sodium chloride, and then you mix it with an acid, and it makes it doesn't make chlorine, but it makes chlorine dioxide, which goes and it has an oxidative burst on toxins, even mycotoxins and glyphosate, and then at organisms, and then it'll neutralize it into salt. And so it's a pretty cool thing. I don't know that I have an opinion on it. It's something I'm just kind of playing with. It's not something I recommend to patients. I think it's one of those sort of, there's some aspects of alternative medicine that are just, we don't know that much about it. It's stupid cheap. I wonder why it's not studied more, but probably because of that, because there's no money to be made and it's stupid cheap. But
yeah, and
all about redox physiology.
Yeah.
So it all has to do with the electrons, and there's an oxidation. So antioxidant, and then oxidant. Usually oxidants are stealing electrons, and then antioxidants are giving. And so it's this constant way that the body is in balance, and it's kind of like exercise too. When you give the body a bit of oxidation, then the body's natural antioxidants come up. And so it's a lot of times we're so in an oxidative, where we have all these toxins and ways our food is so destroyed, and all these stressful things that we want antioxidants. But it's not just needing antioxidants. It goes both ways. So I don't know if I explained that well, but.
Do you guys get all that? I mean, so antioxidants, we want antioxidants, or do we want antioxidants? We do, but it's a balance. You like say when I'm doing a big oxidative vitamin C drip for someone, so I'm pushing it into an oxidative, I don't want to give the body a lot of antioxidants right with it. I want that oxidative to go in and have that reaction in the body and then come back. So it's not always bad, but too much of one side is bad. So an imbalance is bad. But. So we need oxidation, right, Andres? We need some oxidation. It's kind of like almost like a system, right? It's like the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, right? Life is a balance.
That's how our body fights bacteria. It's actually like an oxidative burst that our immune system will go after. So that's where some people, where we're always doing like vitamin C, always antioxidants, but sometimes we forget about that oxidative side as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a push-pull, like it's like like almost like it works on your defense, preventive, like defense, like no, like that kind of. Is that like an oxidation? Is that what it would feel like if it was in your body? Like, what would it look like? Oxidation. Well, I don't know what you mean by feel like, but it's that feeling of, say, when you're having a cold and then your body is mounting an immune response and it's releasing oxidative factors. And actually with COVID, one of the ways too much oxidation gone wild without being balanced is when that cytokine storm happens, and then people go into cytokine shock.
So that's where just that slow bit of some glutathione, some vitamin C, some antioxidant, just a little bit will take people right out of that and preserve lung function, all the organ function. So a good thing can go haywire, and vice versa. You can not be mounting enough of an attack on things too.
Wow, this is so fascinating. I mean, this is so much what's happening with the whole COVID thing, where these people weren't talking about these terms before. People were learning how important this is. Why it's important to educate ourselves, and I encourage everybody to go on. And someone had put in the notes about this. I'm kind of going back. Biophysicist Andres Kalcker and some other thousands of doctors are treating cancer and COVID with this
the
CD. Yeah.
No, and I'm open. I mean, it's just like one of those where usually I can kind of sometimes, and this is a joke, but not really. There's truth in jokes. Because I look to, where are they like really attacking things? I should probably like follow like what's going on there. There might be some truth. There might be some good remedies there. Can kind of use it like a sounding like a just where to look.
Well, this has just been so awesome. But before you go, I want to make sure, you guys are super active in the chat here. We could go on for a long time, and I really want to make sure we answer all your questions. But one of the things that I really wanted to address is, because I've been having this hypothyroid and condition that you've really helped me with. And but what about hyperthyroid? I have someone on the call who has a very active hyperthyroid. And what are because thyroid really, when we're talking about all this stuff, if our thyroid's out of balance, it's going to affect everything, right, Hana? Am I correct? That hormone?
Yeah, and it the kind of relates back to what we were saying about depends where you're at in the hypothyroidism, but if it's autoimmune thyroiditis, it'll be like an attack like Graves. It'll antibodies will start attacking the thyroid, and it'll start actually releasing a lot of thyroid because it's just like pushes it out like fuel, and then you get the symptoms of hyperthyroid. But then over time it tires out, and then you usually need to take thyroid. But one unfortunate thing of this whole condition is that we're pretty bad at treating the underlying cause, which is the immune system. So even if you're taking thyroid or you irradiated your thyroid, usually that's what happens with Graves, or not as much with Hashimoto's, but they actually, damage the thyroid so it won't stop hypersecreting, and then give you thyroid for your life, which is a valid treatment. But then it's ignored that, okay, well, what was attacking, what got triggered to attack that? And so it's usually a process of infections, stress, poor gut health, there's a whole kind of perfect storm that happens, and then it triggers off, whether it's an infection or gluten and soy are notorious for sending that off. And so it's not a simple thing like, just take this one thing. It's usually, you have to kind of work on everything, and it takes time, but it's definitely doable. Many people put it in remission, and it's sad how it's just going nuts right now in terms of autoimmunity in general. Like our modern society is just add it to the list, really.
Yeah. Really. And I'm so glad to end on that. And this is what I would like. You guys were already past our hour. And Dr. Roberts, this has just been incredible, super helpful. And what I want to encourage everybody before we go off is, if we don't already have your email, I know my VA, who's my dear friend, has not been feeling good, but I just want to make sure she puts your website in here. But if you're, I know you're not feeling good, so if you can't do it, it's okay. But just you guys, if you're not already getting my newsletters, please, there goes Hana's website right in there. She does testing. She does teleconferencing too, if you want to ask her more questions. I mean, it's super nice to find someone. Hana is just one of those people that every time I walk into her office, I hug her and I look in her eyes and she looks at me and I know she cares and she helps me get to the root cause of whatever I'm feeling. And so if you don't have someone like that, and there's also a network of naturopathic doctors that you can also find, but she's a terrific resource. And just before I do any, go on and do some announcements, Hana, do you want to just close out and I just want to, just for me and everybody on this call, I think we answered most of your questions. Everybody will have access. You can download the chat so you can look at some of the resources other people have put in here. But please just any last words about taking our health into our own hands and having a second opinion of a naturopath, not totally entrusting yourself in the medical system, which was really what this conversation was about. Any last words you'd like to share with us? And I would be so grateful. We'd all be so grateful for your wisdom.
I would say that we all at this time can't be dependent on the system, anyone else. It is a time for responsibility, and I'm searching for that in my own life. And power comes from being able to do things for yourself. And so that is, I don't think we can say that enough. So when we take our walks and get our sun and our laughs and eat our whole foods and all the things, then that's the base, and the rest is frosting. All the IVs, all the supplements, that's cool, but it's not necessary. And it's not even necessary to have practitioners necessarily. So I'd like to get back to a world where I'm unnecessary, and just that instead I see everything going towards more cool gadgets, more cool this, more just go. And I think we just need less and simple, and that's what the medicine I'm trying to focus on. But I like the rest of it as much as you guys. So
I know. I just thought that was like so perfect. It's a conscious cure. Definitely a conscious cure. Less is more, and really relying on the systems and cycles of nature as our truest guide. And I want to thank you so much for wrapping it up, and me summing up what you just said right there is so beautiful. And I am so grateful to you, Dr. Hana. And we have people in the chat who are looking at your ukulele, and we know that food is fuel and music is medicine. Are you up for just giving us one song?
One song. I might sing this chorus. I just received this morning, so forgive me if I have this little hand, so I play things upside down, but I just picked up the guitar. So
her little hand does magic. Thank you so much.
Call me crazy, I know what's right. Wait, let me get it in front of me.
That mic, get that phone right there. Oh, your voice is so beautiful.
Okay, wait, where's my?
Yes, Beverly. Right on.
All right. Call me crazy, I know what's right. I won't give up the spiritual fire. trap me, 'cause I have all I need within me. You can't trap me, 'cause I have all I need within me. Call me crazy, but I know what's right. I won't give up the spiritual fire. You can't trap me, 'cause I have all I need within me. Within me.
Oh man, that is so beautiful. I'm glad we recorded that.